the 80s, this is what they thought 2015 would look like.
Pause the video right now, because what you are about to discover is something that has been hiding inside one of the most watched films in American history for over 4 decades. Millions of people have seen this movie. Film professors have studied it. Critics have praised every frame of it. And yet, buried inside one of its most dramatic, pulse-racing moments is a mistake so obvious, so glaring, that once your brain registers it, you will never be able to look past it again. This scene was not touched in post-production. Nobody fixed it. Nobody caught it in time. It was packaged up, sent to theaters, and applauded by audiences worldwide, blooper and all. So today, we're going to slow things down, zoom in, and give this legendary mistake the closer look it has always deserved. But to truly understand how a blunder this significant slipped through the cracks, we first need to understand exactly how chaotic the making of Back to the Future really was. The story of Back to the Future begins not on a film set, but in a moment of quiet frustration. It was 1980, and 2 friends named Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale were sitting around, bouncing ideas off each other the way struggling writers do. Zemeckis had already directed a couple of films that had not performed the way he had hoped. Gale was a smart, sharp-tongued writer with a gift for dialogue. Together, they started asking a question that seemed almost too simple to be the foundation of anything great. What would happen if a teenager could travel back in time and accidentally interfere with his own parents' love story? That single question became the seed for one of the most beloved screenplays ever written. They built the world of Hill Valley around it. They created Marty McFly, a cool but ordinary kid who gets tangled up in something extraordinary. They invented Doc Brown, the wild-eyed scientist whose brilliant mind operates on a completely different frequency than everyone around him. They designed the DeLorean, a sleek, stainless steel time machine that would become one of the most recognizable vehicles in pop culture history. On paper, everything about the story worked beautifully. In practice, nobody in Hollywood agreed. Over the course of several years, Zemeckis and Gale took their script to studio after studio, and studio after studio showed them the door. The rejections piled up. More than 40 studios passed on the project. The reasoning was not that the story lacked heart or creativity. The reasoning was almost insulting in its simplicity. The script was not vulgar enough. In the early 1980s, Hollywood comedies were built on shock value. Raunchy humor, adult content, and over-the-top situations were what studios believed audiences wanted. A warm, clever, family-friendly adventure about time travel simply did not fit the mold. Everything changed when Zemeckis directed Romancing the Stone in 1984. The film was a genuine hit, and suddenly Zemeckis was not just another struggling filmmaker chasing his break. He was a proven box office commodity. Universal Pictures took another look at the Back to the Future script, and this time, the answer was yes. But getting a green light was only the beginning of a very rocky road. From the moment they started writing Marty McFly, Zemeckis and Gale had one actor in mind, Michael J. Fox. He was charming without being arrogant. He was funny without trying too hard. He had the kind of youthful energy that could make even the most outlandish situations feel grounded and believable. There was simply no one else, in their minds, who could bring Marty to life the way he could. The problem was that Fox was already committed. His television show, Family Ties, was one of the most popular programs on American television, and the producers of the show had no interest in releasing their star to go make a movie. No amount of negotiating changed their minds. With filming about to begin and the role still empty, Zemeckis turned to another actor, Eric Stoltz. Stoltz was a genuinely talented performer with strong dramatic instincts. He took the role seriously, and that turned out to be precisely the problem. Marty McFly needed to be played with a light touch, a kind of effortless, almost comedic spontaneity that made audiences root for him even when he was making terrible decisions. Stoltz brought gravity to the character. He brought weight and intensity. What he could not bring was the lightness that made Marty work. After several weeks of filming, Zemeckis made one of the most costly decisions in Hollywood history. He recast the role. Everything Stoltz had shot would need to be replaced. Weeks of work, millions of dollars, and enormous amounts of energy would have to be repeated from scratch. And somehow, in the middle of all this upheaval, the production kept moving. Michael J. Fox finally joined the project, splitting his time between early morning film shoots and long days on the Family Ties set. By some accounts, he was sleeping just a handful of hours each night. The pressure was immense. The schedule was brutal. And yet, the performance he ultimately delivered was so natural, so effortless, that audiences never once sensed the chaos behind it. By early 1985, most of the principal photography had been completed, but the film still had to be edited, scored, and loaded with special effects before its release date of July 3rd, a window that left almost no breathing room. The post-production team worked around the clock, cutting scenes together, layering in the visual effects, and mixing the audio into something that felt polished and complete. Some effects did not make it to a fully finished state before the film hit theaters. Small details were slightly rough around the edges, and under the pressure of those final weeks, certain errors that might have been caught and corrected under normal circumstances, simply slipped through unnoticed. The film opened on July 3rd, 1985, and the response was unlike anything anyone had predicted. Audiences flooded theaters. Critics wrote glowing reviews. Back to the Future earned over $380 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of the entire year. The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and The News became a smash hit. The DeLorean became a cultural icon, and Marty McFly became the kind of character that a generation would carry with them for the rest of their lives. But hidden inside all of that success, frozen in the final cut, was a mistake. And it was a big one. Let us talk about the scene in question. It takes place in 1955, inside Doc Brown's cluttered, map-covered workshop. Marty has just arrived from 1985, and he has a problem that almost defies explanation. He needs to convince a man with no knowledge of the future that he genuinely is from the future. So Marty pulls out a camcorder, a piece of technology that would look like science fiction to anyone living in the 1950s, and plays back a video recording he made the night before everything went sideways. On that recording, the 1985 version of Doc Brown is standing in a parking lot, excitedly explaining his time travel theory. He gestures. He speaks. He says lines that are clearly audible, clearly recorded, and clearly captured on camera from a very specific angle. Here is where the blooper lives. If you go back to the scene in 1985 where Marty is actually filming Doc, and you watch carefully, you will see something that makes the whole thing fall apart. The camcorder is not pointed at document. It is hanging at Marty's side, angled down toward the asphalt. At no point during that sequence is the camera raised to frame Doc's face or capture his words in any meaningful way. The lens is essentially pointed at the ground. Yet when that same tape plays back in 1955, the tape that was supposedly recording nothing but concrete and sneakers, it shows a perfectly framed, completely clear video of Doc Brown, speaking directly to the camera, filling the frame exactly as though someone had set up a professional shot. The continuity is shattered. The recording that exists could not possibly exist based on everything the film showed us about how it was made. And nobody caught it. Not during filming. Not during editing. Not during the countless review sessions that a production of this size goes through before release. It went out into the world exactly as it was, and millions of people watched it without ever noticing the disconnect. Once you see it, though, you cannot stop seeing it. The camcorder blooper is the most talked about, but it is not the only place where the film's rushed final stages left fingerprints. There are several other moments scattered across the trilogy that eagle-eyed viewers have spent decades cataloging with a kind of affectionate obsession. Take the flyer for the Save the Clock Tower campaign. It is a seemingly minor prop, a piece of paper that a local activist hands to Marty during his first confused hours in 1955. Jennifer writes a note on the back of it before Marty departs for the past, making it a small but symbolically loaded object. The problem is that the flyer cannot seem to decide what it looks like. In some shots, it appears crisp and brand new. In others, it is visibly worn and crumpled. And in at least one moment, before Jennifer has written a single word, her handwriting is already faintly visible on the back. The prop department was clearly working with multiple versions of the same flyer, and the continuity department did not catch every inconsistency before the cameras rolled. Then there is the background extra situation. During one of the outdoor Hill Valley scenes, a man in period-appropriate clothing can be seen walking around the same corner more than once, moving in exactly the same direction each time. He is clearly the same person, performing the same background action, on a loop. It is the kind of thing that happens when footage is reused to fill out a crowd scene. And it is the kind of thing that an editor catching a tight deadline might not notice until it is already too late to fix. These smaller bloopers work a bit like the larger one, invisible on first viewing, absolutely impossible to unsee once discovered. There's one more behind-the-scenes anomaly worth discussing, and this one is particularly fascinating because it involves a piece of Eric Stoltz that never quite left the film despite the recast. When the decision was made to replace Stoltz with Fox, the production went back and res-hot the vast majority of his scenes. But film sets are complicated places, and not every frame was accounted for with perfect precision. In the diner confrontation scene, the moment where Marty finally stands up to Biff Tannen and throws a punch, the fist connecting with Biff's jaw, is widely believed by cast and crew members to actually belong to Eric Stoltz. Thomas F. Wilson, the actor who played Biff across all three films, has openly stated his belief that the punch was never as hot and that Stoltz's arm is what audiences see making contact in that iconic moment. It is a strange, almost poetic detail. Stoltz may be gone from the film in every other meaningful sense, but according to the people who were there, a small piece of his performance survived the recast. One brief, blink-and-you-miss-it moment where his physical presence is still, technically, part of the story. Here is what is genuinely remarkable about all of this. None of it matters. Not in the way that would matter for a lesser film. The camcorder blooper does not make Back to the Future feel sloppy. The flyer continuity errors do not make it feel careless. The background extra loop does not make it feel cheap. These mistakes exist, they are real, and they are genuinely funny once you know to look for them. But they have not diminished the film's reputation by a single degree. If anything, they have added to it. Part of the reason for that is the sheer quality of everything surrounding these mistakes. The screenplay is airtight in all the ways that matter. The performances are electric. The pacing never lets you stop and ask uncomfortable questions because the story is always moving, always building, always hurtling you forward toward the next moment of tension or humor or wonder. By the time your brain could theoretically register the camera angle inconsistency, it has already moved on to caring about something else entirely. But there is another reason these bloopers have become beloved rather than damaging, and it has to do with how fans relate to the film. Back to the Future is not the kind of movie people watch once and file away. It is the kind of movie people return to again and again across their entire lives, finding new things to appreciate with each viewing. The bloopers are part of that discovery process. Finding them feels like earning a secret, like joining an exclusive club of people who know something about this film that casual viewers do not. Online communities have spent decades compiling lists of every error, every continuity slip, every anachronism, every impossible detail. The discussion never really ends. In that sense, the mistakes are not failures of filmmaking. They are gifts to the audience, small, unintentional rewards for paying close attention. What does it say about a film when its bloopers become as famous and beloved as its most iconic scenes? It says that the film has reached a level of cultural permanence that most movies never come close to. Back to the Future was selected by the United States Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry. It is studied in film schools. It is quoted in political speeches, most famously when President Ronald Reagan, who had initially been a Hollywood actor before entering politics, worked out Brown's famous line about not needing roads into his 1986 State of the Union address, a fictional scientist's words delivered by a sitting president to the entire nation. The film crossed every boundary between entertainment and cultural touchstone. It became a shared language that people from wildly different backgrounds could use to connect with one another. And the bloopers, the camcorder that could not have recorded what it recorded, the flyer that aged backward, the fist that might belong to a different actor, became part of that shared language too. They remind us that even works of genuine greatness are made by human beings working under pressure, making judgment calls in the middle of the night, trying to solve 100 problems at once and occasionally missing one. The rushed release schedule that forced errors into the final cut is the same rushed release schedule that gave audiences the film in time for the summer of 1985. The chaos that produced the mistakes is inseparable from the passion that produced the magic. So here is what you should do. Pull up Back to the Future tonight. You have probably seen it before. Maybe you have seen it a dozen times. But this time, when Marty pulls out that camcorder in the Twin Pines Mall parking lot, watch where the lens is pointing. Watch it carefully. Then watch the playback scene in 1955 and ask yourself how that footage could possibly exist. You already know the answer. It could not. But it does. And it always will. That is the strange, wonderful, endlessly entertaining reality of Back to the Future. A film so good that its mistakes became legendary. A blooper so visible that it somehow stayed invisible for years. A scene that was never edited, never fixed, and never needed to be, because the movie around it was more than strong enough to carry it. Once you see it, you will never watch the film the same way again. And honestly, that is kind of perfect.